Before we get started, I would appreciate if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you. Welcome to lesson 4, everybody, and in this lesson we're going to be talking about the Bitcoin blockchain security. So the security of the Bitcoin blockchain and how it is vulnerable as well with a specific attack. So we're going to cover in this lesson, we're going to learn about the Bitcoin blockchain security and what makes Bitcoin blockchain secure. And we're also going to delve into what is a 51% attack and should you be worried or concerned about a 51% attack on the Bitcoin blockchain. So we've got quite a bit to cover, so let's get started. So is Bitcoin secure? Yes, and these are the reasons why, the main reasons why Bitcoin is secure. Firstly, it's because the Bitcoin blockchain transactions are all cryptographically encrypted. We sort of covered this in the last lesson where we spoke about hashing and how it encrypts the Bitcoin blockchain transactions via cryptography, which can't be hacked into because it's really complex. Bitcoin uses the cryptographic algorithm SHA-256, and these transactions are secured via this cryptographic encryptions, which protects them from being altered, manipulated, and is also what enables Bitcoin to be decentralized as well and the ledger to be public, because anyone can run a Bitcoin node and nobody can manipulate the data within the transactions due to this cryptography. And Bitcoin has been running by itself now since 2009, and no one has ever been able to break through or hack into these cryptographic encryptions. The second reason why Bitcoin is secure is because the Bitcoin blockchain is decentralized and public. And we've already discussed the difference between the banks and how they are centralized, and how Bitcoin blockchain is the opposite. And this decentralization makes the Bitcoin ledger secure because in order to destroy Bitcoin, it does not have a single point of failure, and you'd have to destroy all the nodes out there, and there are thousands of nodes around the world with a copy of the Bitcoin ledger. So literally, to destroy the whole network, you have to get rid of every single one of these nodes. If one of them exists, then from that single one, thousands of more nodes could be created basically. And that's different to the banks, where they are centralized, and in order to destroy their systems, you just simply have to attack their central point, and once that's down, then their infrastructure is down. Whereas Bitcoin is different because of the decentralization, and that adds to the Bitcoin security as well, because the more decentralized your network is in cryptocurrency, the more secure it is. And also Bitcoin is public, so that means the ledger is public. Everyone can see the transactions, the data, and anyone can see any manipulation, which cannot happen. But let's just say something was to happen where there was some sort of manipulation, then it's public for the whole of the Bitcoin community network to see, and then something could be done about it. Whereas when things like ledgers are private, in the case of the banking systems, a lot of corruption can occur behind the scenes, and nobody knows how money is being used, spent, what's happening on the books. Whereas with Bitcoin, due to the ledger being public, it also secures the ledger as well. So it's public, it cannot be, it's protected via cryptography, and it's decentralized. So loads of people have a copy of this ledger, so the ledger cannot be destroyed, ruined, or changed. And if anything was to happen, because it's public, we would all know about it. So something could be done about it. And another reason why the Bitcoin blockchain is secure is due to miners. Now, miners secure the Bitcoin blockchain, and they are responsible for verifying transactions and confirming transactions. And this is what miners do. The more miners there are on the Bitcoin blockchain, the stronger the network is. Because remember, miners, we covered this in the last lesson, where they use their computing power which is known as hash power or the hashing power, and they use this towards the Bitcoin network. And the more hash power the Bitcoin network has, the stronger it is, the more secure it is, and the less vulnerable it is. And without miners, there would be no confirmation of transactions, so payments won't be able to go through and they won't be able to be spent once they are sent. So miners are very, very, very important in securing the Bitcoin network and in confirming and verifying transactions and making sure those blocks of transactions are added to the blockchain. And I think with Bitcoin, there's over 300,000 miners out there mining Bitcoin. Some estimates say there are 1 million miners out there. We do not know the exact number, but there is at least upwards of 300,000, 500,000 miners mining Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is one of the most secure blockchains out there, with a lot of mining power, hash rate power, contributing to the network. So what is a 51% attack? Now, this is probably the main threat to the Bitcoin network, or one of the main threats to the Bitcoin network, if you want to consider it as a threat, although it is extremely difficult and highly unlikely to occur. And I want you to remember that and understand that a 51% attack is something that is extremely difficult, and the chances of it occurring is slim and very highly unlikely. And we're going to talk more about it in this lesson, and whether you should be concerned or worried about a 51% attack with Bitcoin. So a 51% attack is basically when a miner or a mining pool has more than half of the Bitcoin mining power, in other words, hash rate or the hash power in the world. Then they could alter the Bitcoin blockchain in a malicious way and potentially introduce fraudulent transactions. So remember when we spoke about miners and we spoke about mining pools. A mining pool is a pool where many individual miners share their resources together as one in order to try to solve the block puzzle so that they can be rewarded in Bitcoin, because it's no longer easy for a solo miner to mine Bitcoin by themselves anymore due to the amount of mining competition out there. So what they do is join mining pools. So if a solo miner or a mining pool has more than half of the Bitcoin mining power in the world, so if you take the Bitcoin mining power as a whole, 100%, if one mining pool has more than half of that power, they control more than half of that power, then they potentially have the ability to alter the Bitcoin blockchain in a malicious way and potentially introduce fraudulent transactions. And we'll be talking more about that. What they are able to do is they are able to do this because they would be able to produce the longest chain, overtaking other miners in confirming blocks, since the attacker controls most of the hash rate power. There's something you have to understand when it comes to the Bitcoin blockchain and confirming transaction blocks. The longest chain is the chain that has the most proof of work done to it. And proof of work is basically the work that miners do when they solve the cryptographic puzzle to confirm transactions. It's known as proof of work, and the hash power that's used is all part of the proof of work process. So the chain that is the longest chain, it's considered to be the most valid chain or the correct chain by the network because it has the most proof of work done to it. It has the most hash power dedicated to it. So if you have a 51% attack, those miners, because they control most of the hash power of the network, they are able to produce the longest chain because in theory they are able to confirm blocks faster than all other miners out there because they control most of the hash power. So because they're confirming blocks more, they're building a longer chain faster, and their chain is faster than all the other miners who are trying to confirm blocks. So the network sees the longest chain as the correct and valid chain, and this is where, because the network sees the longest chain as the most valid chain, if the longest chain is run by a 51% attacker, and who is malicious. This is basically what a 51% attack is. So the longest chain overtakes other miners in confirming blocks, since the attacker controls most of the hash rate power. So as a result, the attacker's chain would have the most proof of work done to it and would be accepted by all the other nodes in the network as being the longest and most correct one, because they all accept the chain that has the most proof of work done to it. So that's what a 51% attack is. So what can a 51% blockchain attacker do? So if you control more than half of the Bitcoin computing power in the network, more than half of the Bitcoin hash power, and you are able to mine the longest chain, which is considered as valid by the rest of the network, then with this power, what can you potentially do as a 51% attacker? These are the four things that you can do. So a 51% attacker can exclude or modify the ordering of transactions within blocks. Now remember, miners are responsible for adding transactions, the unconfirmed transactions, to blocks in order to be confirmed. Now what a 51% attacker can do is modify the ordering of these transactions. So they can cherry pick which transactions they want to include in a block, or which transactions they don't want to include in a block. Secondly, a 51% attacker would be able to monopolize the mining of blocks to earn rewards by preventing other miners from completing blocks. So remember, the whole mining process is competitive, but if you own 51% of the hash rate and hash power of the network, then you kind of have a monopoly now over the mining of blocks and confirming them, and you sort of have a monopoly over the rewards, because you can mine blocks faster than everyone else compared to all the other miners, and as a result of mining blocks faster, you are earning all the Bitcoin rewards, and you can prevent other miners from completing these blocks before you. Another thing a 51% attacker can do is reverse transactions they made whilst in control, causing a double spend problem, and we're going to discuss this in more detail on how they are able to do this and how they are able to reverse a transaction that they've made and how they are able to then spend them twice, causing a double spend problem. Lastly, a 51% attacker would be able to halt payments by stopping certain or all transactions from being confirmed, because as I've said, the miners are responsible for adding unconfirmed transactions in a block. So what a 51% attacker could do is prevent everyone from adding their unconfirmed transactions in a block, and as a result, they basically stopped payments from being confirmed, and they've stopped transactions from being confirmed, and it basically can cause a disruption in the blockchain, and Bitcoin would no longer be a network that works in order to transfer cryptocurrency to each other, Bitcoin to each other, if a 51% attacker decides to disrupt the blockchain in that manner. And we're going to go into more detail about this. So that's what a 51% blockchain attacker can potentially do if they choose to do so. So what happens in a 51% attack? This is a basic illustration to try to explain to you what actually happens, just to help you visualize it in this illustrative format. So as you already know, let's look at the keys up above. The green ovals represent the decentralized nodes. The blue represent the ovals represent the decentralized miners, and then we have the big red oval, and let's just say they are the rogue miners with 51% of the hash power, because remember, mining is decentralized and anyone can be a Bitcoin miner, but let's just say there was one miner that has more computing resources than every other miner out there, or it's one mining pool that has more miners contributing to that pool than all the other miners out there, and this rogue miner has 51% of the hash power. So the hash power is 100%, and this 100% is supposed to consist of all the hash power within the network, whereas this rogue miner has more than 51% of that hash power that they are in control of. Then we have the blue squares, which is the unconfirmed block the miners are competing to solve. Then we have the yellow squares, which are the confirmed valid blocks that have already been solved. And then we have the red squares, which are the malicious blocks mined by the 51% attacker. So in this case, what usually happens when there's a 51% attack is the rogue miner has most of the mining power, so they confirm the blocks, the unconfirmed transactions, faster than every other decentralized miner in the network. So once they confirmed the transaction, they add it to the blockchain, but they don't broadcast it. And what I mean by broadcast it, they don't let the network know that they have confirmed these transactions. So on the top we have the original, the valid blockchain with all the confirmed transactions, and from this block here, let's just say this is where the 51% attack occurred. So this is where the 51% attack occurred, and from this block onwards, this is where the rogue miner has been mining their blocks in secret because they control most of the hash rate. So they are confirming blocks and they're adding it from this block onwards. This is where the attack occurred. So they're adding their confirmed blocks to their chain in private, in secret, without broadcasting it to the network, the rest of the nodes, to verify. So they're adding it, and as you can see, their chain is growing faster than the main chain, which is considered as valid by all these nodes. So the rest of the miners, they're working to confirm blocks in order to add it to the main chain. These are the good miners, and they're working according to the protocol, the network, how it's supposed to be done, and they're working in order to add their unconfirmed blocks to the main chain. And as you can see, they're moving at a slower pace compared to the rogue miner, which is moving much faster, and the reason being is because they control most of the hash rate power. So then what happens is the rogue miner then broadcasts their chain to the network. So they broadcast their chain to all these decentralized nodes, to the network, who then verify it. And what do they see? They see that the rogue miner's chain has the longest proof of work done to it. It's the longest chain. So they consider it to be the most valid chain. And what do? They then update their ledgers to the longest chain, which is also the chain that has a 51% attack on it. So the ledgers are updated. So as we know from this block onwards, it's been the rogue miner mining. These blocks are erased, and this chain and all the blocks in this chain, including the rogue blocks from the miner, has been added to the ledger as the most correct chain. Now, we already discussed what a miner can do in their rogue blocks. They can do several things, and one is they can prevent transactions from being added to the block, and 2, they can modify the order of transactions within a block, and 3, they can do a double spend attack where they can reverse a transaction and double spend it, and 4, they can monopolize the network and take control of the mining to earn the mining rewards, which is what they've done here. They've earned all the mining rewards for these blocks, and they prevented the other miners from mining because they are in control of the hash rate and the hash power. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon so as to not miss my next video.